The last rejection. Zelin stood in the great crystal hall, her head bowed, her small hands shaking. Around her, tall alien males stood in a wide circle. Their eyes were cold. Their faces showed no kindness. She had stood here before, 5 times now, and each time the answer was the same. Too small, too weak, unfit. The 6th male stepped forward. His skin was silver, and horns curled from his head like sharp crowns. He looked down at her with disgust. "You are not worthy to be my mate," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "A queen must be strong. You are nothing." Zelin didn't speak. She never did. No one listened when she tried. They only saw her small size, her soft voice, her quiet steps. The Empress, her mother, sat on a tall throne of glowing stones. She watched everything, her face as still as a mask. "You have failed again, daughter," the Empress said coldly. "No one will take you. No one wants a useless flower." Zelin's eyes burned, but no tears came. She had cried them all out long ago. She bowed again, lower this time. "I accept exile," she whispered. Gasps filled the hall. Exile. The word was a curse. The Empress waved her hand. "Take her to the wastelands. Let her learn why the strong survive." But before the guards could move, a new sound filled the chamber. It was the slow, calm steps of boots on crystal floor. Everyone turned. Man walked into the hall. He was strange, smaller than the alien males, but taller than Zelin. He had no horns, no scales, no glowing eyes, just short brown hair, old boots, and a long coat. A patch on his chest showed a faded Earth flag, a human. The Empress frowned. "Who are you?" The man stopped next to Zelin. He looked at her not with judgment but with curiosity, and then with warmth. "Name's Kale," he said softly. "From Earth." The Empress raised an eyebrow. "This is not your place, human." "Maybe not," Kale said, still looking at Zelin. "But I heard your call for suitors. Thought I'd take a look." Laughter broke out in the room. The alien males mocked him. A human? Choosing a mate from the royal bloodline? Go home, earthworm. Kale didn't care. He knelt down in front of Zelin. "What's your name?" he asked gently. Zelin looked at him, surprised. No one had ever asked her that before. Not like that. Not with kindness. "Zelin," she said softly. Kale smiled. "That's a strong name." The Empress stood. "Human, you dare mock our traditions?" Kale stood up. "No mockery, just choice. You offered your daughter for alliance. No one chose her. I will." Silence fell. Heavy, sharp, dangerous. The Empress's eyes narrowed. "You understand what you are doing? She is unwanted, untested, too small." Kale looked at Zelin. She looked back, unsure if this was real. "She's brave," Kale said. "Braver than anyone here. Took 6 rejections and still stood tall. I like that." The Empress's voice turned cold. "You will not survive the path she must walk." "Maybe," Kale said, "but I'll walk it anyway." Zelin's heart beat faster. No one had ever stood beside her before. No one had seen more than her size, more than her weakness. "He can't be serious," one alien male growled. "She has nothing." "I see plenty," Kale said, "and I choose her." The Empress stared at him, then at Zelin. The hall watched in silence. "Very well," the Empress said at last. "She is yours. But her path is no easier just because you walked in with words. You will both be tested." Kale nodded. "We'll see how it goes." The Empress turned away. "Take them out of my sight." The guards stepped back. They did not touch Zelin now, not with a human watching. As they left the hall, Kale walked beside her, not in front, not behind. Equal steps. Outside in the cold wind, Zelin finally looked at him fully. "Why?" she asked. Kale shrugged. "You looked like someone worth walking with." She didn't know what to say, but for the first time in a long time, she smiled. Why would a human choose her? The wind outside the royal palace was bitter and dry. Sharp dust blew across the open fields like tiny blades. But Zelin didn't notice the cold anymore. Not when a strange human walked beside her like she mattered. Kale didn't talk much as they walked through the silent outskirts. He simply glanced at her now and then, making sure she wasn't falling behind. Zelin, for the first time in her life, didn't know how to act. She had always walked, behind someone, behind her mother, behind the guards, behind rejection. But this man, this human, walked next to her. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely louder than the wind. Kale looked forward. "Away from those who can't see your worth." Zelin blinked. "You don't know me." He stopped and turned. "I saw enough." She stared at him. The alien males who judged her never stopped to ask her name, never listened to her voice, never looked past her size. But Kale had done all three. Still, doubt clung to her heart. "What if you made a mistake?" she whispered. Kale grinned. "Then I'll live with it, but I doubt it." They reached an old cargo platform, half buried in rust and wind. Kale pressed his hand to a panel, and a small shuttle hissed to life. Human tech. Ugly, dented but alive. He opened the door for her. Zelin paused. "No one ever opened a door for me." "Get used to it," Kale said. Inside the shuttle, the seats were worn, the walls scratched, but it felt safer than the Golden Palace ever did. She sat, and for the first time, allowed herself to breathe. As they lifted into the sky, Zelin asked, "Why did you come to our world?" Kale leaned back. "I was sent to explore trade routes, nothing fancy, just a wanderer with no home." Zelin frowned. "No home?" "Earth is gone," he said. "Or broken. We lost so much in the last war. Not many humans left now, I'm just floating." Zelin lowered her eyes. She suddenly felt a strange pull toward him. Both of them were small in different ways. Both of them were seen as unimportant, forgotten. But she didn't know one thing. "Why did you really choose me?" she asked again. Kale looked at her quiet. "Now, you stood in that hall?" he said slowly. 6 rejections, each one sharper than the last. And you never broke. That's not weakness. That's power. Zelin didn't reply, but her fingers curled tightly in her lap. Those words, power, they never belonged to her before. Their ship drifted toward a broken human outpost floating near a gas moon. Kale docked it gently and led her inside. "We'll stay here a while," he said, "until we know what your mother plans." Zelin nodded, but her thoughts were spinning. Why would the Empress let her go so easily? Why not lock her away? Or worse. Suddenly, the lights in the outpost flickered. Kale reached for a pulse gun. "Stay behind me." "What is it?" she asked. "Company," he whispered. A moment later, a low growl echoed through the metal halls. Not machines, not guards. Something else. Then she saw it. A shadow moved at the edge of the corridor. Tall, insect-like. Glowing red eyes. "Tracker drone," Kale hissed. "Her mother didn't let you go. She's hunting you." Zelin's blood turned cold. "Run!" Kale shouted. They bolted through the dusty halls. Zelin's legs were fast but short. Kale slowed down to keep pace with her. The drone's sharp claws scraped the walls behind them. They reached a dead-end chamber. "We're trapped," Zelin gasped. Kale didn't panic. Instead, he turned and stood in front of her. "Get behind me, stay low. You'll die," she cried. He smiled without fear. "Better me than you." But before the drone could strike, Zelin stepped forward. Her voice rose. Not soft, not weak, but loud and clear. "Stop." To Kale's shock, the drone hesitated. Zelin held up her hand. Glowing lines appeared on her palm, hidden marks of royal command. "I am of the blood," she shouted. "You answer to me." The drone trembled. Sparks flew from its limbs, then it shut down. Silence. Kale stared at her. You controlled it. Zelin fell to her knees, shaking. I didn't know I could, she whispered. No one ever told me. Kale helped her up. Then we just found your real strength. She looked up at him, eyes full of fear and hope. They'll keep coming, won't they? Yes, Kale said. But so will we. A princess with no throne. The outpost lights flickered again. This time not from danger, but from power loss. Zelin sat in the dark, her hands still shaking. Her body was small, her voice soft, but something deep inside her had changed. The tracker, drone had listened to her command. Something in her blood and her name held authority she never knew she had. Kale watched her carefully. He didn't speak right away. He just stood nearby, making sure nothing else came crawling out of the shadows. Are you okay? He asked quietly. Zelin looked up. Her eyes were distant. I don't know what I am anymore. You're not? Nothing, Kale said. Not to me. They stayed in silence for a while. Above them, through a cracked window, stars drifted past like frozen sparks. The galaxy was big. Too big for someone like Zelin. But now, maybe not. Hours passed before they moved. The outpost was no longer safe. If one drone found them, more would follow. Kale opened a hidden door in the floor. Under it, an old tunnel led to a forgotten escape pod, human tech. Rough and patched with tape, but it still worked. As the pod launched, Zelin asked, Where are we going now? Somewhere they won't expect, Kale said. A dead colony called Varos 9. Why there? Because no one, in their right mind, would go there. Zelin swallowed hard. She didn't ask more. She just held on as the pod shook and jumped into warp. The colony was dead, just like Kale said. Dust storms howled over the broken steel buildings. Old bones lay buried in the sand, human and alien. War had touched this place once, and then silence had taken over. Kale helped Zelin down. He checked a scanner. No signals, no drones, at least not yet. Zelin looked around. What happened here? Kale knelt near an old human flag. It was torn, half buried. This was one of the first human colonies after the war. Your kind didn't like us spreading. My kind? Zelin asked softly. Not you, Kale corrected. The ones in power like your mother. Zelin's eyes dropped. I'm her daughter. Maybe I'm part of that too. Kale shook his head. You're not like her. They found an old shelter under the ruins. It still had heat and food packs. They cleaned it, rested, and for the first time in days, slept in peace. But peace didn't last. The next day, a signal lit up Kale's scanner. Not from enemies, but from the galaxy itself. What is that? Zelin asked, stepping closer. Kale's eyes widened. News broadcast. From the throne world. He clicked a button. A hologram floated above the scanner. The image showed the Empress standing before the galaxy. My daughter, she said, has been taken by a human, a criminal from a broken race. She is no longer one of us. She has betrayed her royal blood. Zelin's breath caught. The Empress continued. Anyone who sees her, or the human, must report them, and those who protect them will be hunted. The message ended. Zelin sat down hard. I'm not just rejected now, I'm hunted. You always were, Kale said gently. You just didn't know it. She looked at him, fear rising. Why are you still with me? Because I chose you, Kale said. Not because of your title, because of who you are. She shook her head. You don't know who I am. Then show me, he said. Don't hide it, not anymore. They stayed underground, but whispers began to spread. Pirates, smugglers, traitors, news of a human, with a tiny alien girl who had the voice of command. Some laughed, some got curious, and some got greedy. One night, a stranger knocked on the shelter door. Kale grabbed his gun. Zelin stayed back. The door opened slowly. A tall alien female stepped inside, scarred armor, a heavy rifle, and glowing yellow eyes. I heard you were here, she said. You're the human who claimed the broken princess. Who are you? Kale asked. I'm a bounty hunter, she said. But I'm not here to turn you in. Zelin stepped forward. Then why? Because, the bounty hunter said. I saw the broadcast, and I used to believe what they said about you. But then I remembered something. The Empress once exiled my sister for being too short. Kale raised an eyebrow. So? So now I want to see what happens when the galaxy finally meets someone. It threw away, the hunter said. I want to see what a real leader looks like. Zelin stared. I'm not a leader, the hunter smiled. Not yet. That night, Zelin couldn't sleep. She stood outside the shelter staring at the stars. A leader with no throne, she whispered. Kale joined her. Maybe you don't need a throne. Maybe you just need your voice. She looked at him. And what if my voice brings war? Then, let it bring truth first, Kale said. And as the stars turned above, Zelin made a decision. She wouldn't hide anymore. The Trial of Worth. The sky over Varos 9 cracked with thunder as a storm rolled in. Black clouds gathered above the broken colony and dust storms roared like ancient beasts. But inside the shelter, Zelin was not hiding. Not anymore. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by Kale and the bounty hunter named Rasa. Her small body cast a long shadow against the flickering lights. We can't run forever, she said. We have to face this. Kale folded his arms. What are you thinking? Zelin turned toward him. Her voice was calm. I'm going back. Kale stepped forward. No. It's a trap. I know, Zelin said. But I'm not going back to beg. I'm going to make them see who I really am. Rasa grinned. Now you sound like someone worth following. 2 days later, a royal message shook the outer colonies. The Empress had spoken again. If the human believes he has chosen well, let him prove it, she declared. I offer him a challenge, the trial of worth. Let him enter the arena of blades. If he wins, I will hear the girl's voice. If he loses, she dies. The message spread like wildfire. Across 100 systems, screens lit up. Beings of every shape and color tuned in to watch. Not because they cared for the human, not because they supported the princess, but because no human had ever entered the arena and walked out alive. On the day of the trial, Zelin and Kale stood at the gates of the royal city. The guards opened the doors without a word. The arena loomed before them, a giant bowl of steel and stone. Sharp towers rose into the sky and fire pits burned at every corner. Alien nobles filled the seats, laughing and whispering, waiting for blood. Zelin stood by Kale's side. Her heart pounded. You don't have to do this, she said. Yes, I do, Kale replied. Not because of the trial, because of you. He touched her hand. Just once. Just long enough for her to feel his warmth. Then he turned and walked into the arena. The gates slammed shut behind him. The announcer's voice roared across the stadium. One human, one chance, against 5 warriors of the Empress's choosing, the crowd screamed. Kale stood in the center, alone. No armor, no fancy weapons. Just a worn pulse blade and a calm stare. The first warrior stepped out, a hulking beast with 4 arms and metal tusks. His laugh shook the ground. You're not worth my time, human, he growled. Then don't waste it, Kale said. The alien charged. Fast, brutal. But Kale was faster. He rolled under the blow, slashed the back of the warrior's knee and jumped away. The crowd gasped. The beast roared and swung again, but missed. Kale moved like smoke, dodging left, sliding right, and striking with precision. The fight ended in less than a minute. The first warrior fell. Zelin's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen anything like it. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't larger, but he understood something none of the alien males ever did: how to survive. The second warrior came next, a snake-like fighter with venomous claws and spinning blades. Kale took a hit to the shoulder. Blood ran down his arm, But he never stopped moving, never stopped thinking. One by one they came. One by one. He beat them. He limped by the time the fifth warrior entered the field. His arm was cut. His leg was bruised. His breath was short, but his eyes burned like fire. The last warrior was silent. He wore no armor, only a hood. No one knew his name. When he moved, it was like wind. Kale swung his blade, but the warrior vanished. Punch hit Kale's ribs. He stumbled, a kick to the back. He fell. Zelin cried out from the stands. "Get up!" Kale heard her voice. It echoed inside him. He rolled, grabbed a rock, and threw it. Not at the warrior, but at the fire pit. The flames exploded. The warrior flinched just for a second. It was enough. Kale jumped and slammed his blade into the ground, sending sparks into the warrior's face. Then he punched with everything he had. The hood fell. The crowd gasped. The final warrior was a clone of Kale himself. "They wanted to break you," Zelin whispered, "by making you fight yourself." But Kale had done more than win. He had faced his reflection and chosen not to fear it. The clone fell. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Kale, bleeding and exhausted, raised his blade. The gates opened. Zelin ran to him and caught him before he fell. The Empress rose from her throne. "You have passed," she said, "but your voice must still prove its worth." Zelin stood tall. "Then listen," she said, her voice echoing across the arena. "I was born in silence, raised in shadows, rejected for my size, cursed for my softness. But today, my voice commands fire. Today, a human bled for me. Today, I choose who I am." The crowd listened. Zelin pointed at the Empress. "Your power ends here. You rule with fear. I will lead with truth." The Empress stared at her daughter, and for the first time she looked unsure, a heart too strong to break. The wind outside the arena howled like an ancient beast. Storm clouds curled around the towers of the royal city. Inside, the silence after Zelin's speech was heavy. It wasn't just quiet. It was tense, dangerous, full of weight. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't mock. They waited. The Empress stood still on her high throne, her long cloak swaying behind her. Her eyes burned with cold fire, but her lips didn't move. Not yet. Below, Kale leaned on Zelin, his body bruised and bleeding. But his hand still gripped the pulse blade, and his eyes never left the Empress. Zelin felt the pressure of every noble, every soldier, every spy watching her. She had spoken boldly. She had challenged the throne. Now she would see what came next. "You speak as if you are more than what you were born to be," the Empress finally said, her voice sharp like ice. "But courage in words means nothing, without cost. Are you ready to pay it?" Zelin looked up. "I already did. You just never noticed." The crowd stirred. Whispers spread like fire across the stands. That night, they returned to the private quarters once built for royal blood. It had been sealed since Zelin's exile, full of dust and memories. Kale collapsed onto the couch, wincing with pain. Zelin tore open a medkit and began to clean his wounds. "You didn't have to fight them," she whispered, her hands trembling. "You didn't have to speak," Kale replied. "You could have died. So could you." They both went quiet. Outside, the window. Storm lightning flashed across the city skyline. Thunder rolled like distant drums of war. Zelin looked at Kale's face. Even bruised and bleeding, he still looked calm. Still sure. Still human. "When I was young," she said softly, "I used to dream someone would see me. Not for my power or my title. Just me." "And now?" Kale asked. Zelin hesitated, then smiled a little. Now someone did. But their peace didn't last. The next morning, a loud bang shook the door of the chamber. Rasa, the bounty hunter, burst in. "They're coming," she said. "Your mother sent her royal blades, 10 of them." "Not to arrest us?" Kale asked. No, Rasa said. To erase you. Zelin stood. Why? She gave me a trial. I passed. Rasa's face was hard. You made her look weak in front of the galaxy, now she wants to fix that. Kale pushed himself up, wincing. We need to move. Rasa nodded. There's an old smuggler tunnel under the palace, but it's dangerous, and it leads into the forgotten quarters. Zelin grabbed her cloak. Danger is better than death. They escaped just before the blades arrived. Through the hidden tunnels they moved in silence. Old pipes leaked steam. Shadows shifted. Memories clung to every wall. Of power, of lies, of things the Empire buried. Zelin stopped near a broken wall. Her hand touched the edge. This was my room. When I was little. Kale paused. You remember it? I remember the silence, she whispered. No laughter, no comfort, just rules. Behind them a sudden sound echoed. Boots. Fast. Too fast. They found us, Rasa hissed. Kale pulled Zelin behind an old pillar. Rasa fired toward the shadows and sparks flew. One of the royal blades leapt forward, sword raised high. Zelin shouted, Stop! And the blade froze. Her voice struck something deep. The blade stared at her, confused, afraid. I am royal blood, she said. You will not kill me. But the others didn't stop. Kale and Rasa fought back, blade against blade, shot against shot. Zelin's voice rose louder. Enough! Light surged from her palms, golden, soft, but strong. It pushed the attackers back like a wave of truth. The tunnel went quiet. Even Rasa stood still, her weapon lowered. Kale breathed hard. What was that? Zelin looked at her hands, glowing gently. My heart, she said, is no longer afraid. They reached an abandoned observatory deep under the palace. Old star maps lit the ceiling, and the walls showed battles from long ago. There, Zelin sent a message to the galaxy. Not through the Empress's channels, through the old signal towers, once used by rebels. Her voice echoed across the stars. Was thrown away, judged by size, by silence, by softness. But I have walked through rejection. I have faced death. I have survived the trial of worth, not with hate, but with heart. Across colonies and ships and faraway moons, her message played alien girls who were told they were too small, listened, alien soldiers who followed orders without thinking, paused, nobles who mocked her, grew quiet. The galaxy watched, and for the first time in generations, listened. Back in the royal city, the Empress stood in her tower, staring at the signal. A general stepped forward. What do we do, my Empress? The Empress did not answer, because for the first time in her life, she was afraid, not of war, not of humans, but of her own daughter. When the galaxy turned to watch, the stars across the galaxy were no longer still. Ships paused mid-flight. Screens lit up in Cold War rooms. Warriors, slaves, nobles, farmers, all were watching. The message of the forgotten princess had reached them, soft, gentle, but powerful enough to crack the pride of empires. Zelin sat in the shadow of the old observatory. She watched the flickering lights on the tower console showing how far her message had traveled. They're listening, she whispered. Kale stood beside her, wrapping a bandage around his ribs. Yeah, and now they're waiting. Zelin didn't answer. Her hands were trembling, not from fear but from the weight of what she had started. Rasa walked in, her armor scratched and dusty. You've stirred the hornet's nest. Messages are coming in, not from your mother's court, but from across the outer systems. Zelin turned. What do they say? Rasa dropped a small hollow on the table. It flickered. Voices played one after another. We believe you. My daughter was thrown away too. I was called weak. Now I follow you. Show us what's next. Kale leaned forward. They want you to lead. Zelin's voice shook. I'm not ready. No one ever is, Kale said. But you're the only one who can. Before she could reply, the room shook violently. An explosion. Dust rained from the ceiling. Rasa grabbed her rifle. They found us again. But it wasn't just the blades this time. A full strike team had landed. Elite soldiers, cloaked assassins, and behind them, the golden guard of the Empress herself. This is no arrest, Rasa muttered. This is the final order. They ran into the back halls of the observatory. Kale and Rasa covered the rear while Zelin moved ahead, her heart pounding. The walls around them began to collapse. Fire roared through the vents. One of the golden guards caught up. Huge, armored, merciless. He swung his blade at Kale, who blocked just in time. Sparks flew. Go, Kale shouted. Get her out. Rasa grabbed Zelin and pulled her into a maintenance shaft. Zelin looked back. Kale was surrounded. She screamed, "No!" Rasa shoved her forward. "He knew the risk. We have to get you to the tower." They reached the heart of the observatory. There, the master signal beacon stood, tall, ancient, glowing faint blue. It could send one last message, one powerful enough to reach even the far systems untouched by Empire control. Zelin turned to Rasa. "Can we send a message strong enough to break through?" "Yes," Rasa said. "But once you do, they'll trace it, and we won't be able to run." Zelin nodded slowly. "I don't want to run." She stepped up to the beacon and placed her hand on it. Blue light wrapped around her fingers. The machine responded, not to command codes, but to her presence. The system recognized her bloodline, and for the first time, accepted her as more than just royal, as a voice worth hearing. Outside, Kale fought like a man with nothing left to lose. He dodged, struck, blocked. Pain filled his lungs. His arm was weak, his legs shaking, but every time he looked up, he saw Zelin's face in his mind, the one person who had made him feel alive again. He would not let her light be crushed. In the beacon chamber, Zelin spoke, into the console. Her voice was calm, strong, clear. "This is for those who were told they were nothing, for those who were left behind. I am Zelin, daughter of power, born in silence. And I say this, no more." She paused, then said louder, "We don't need to match their strength. We need to remember our worth." The beacon flared. Stars lit up. Across thousands of ships and colonies, her message echoed again, louder than ever. Back in the hall, Kale finally fell. His blade clattered on the floor. A golden guard raised his sword for the final strike. But before it could fall, a wave of golden energy exploded through the corridor. It came from deep inside the observatory. The walls shook. The guard was thrown back. Zelin stepped into the corridor, glowing with the light of the beacon. Her eyes burned with truth. "Touch him again," she said, "and your empire ends today." The guards hesitated. They stepped back, and for the first time, someone bowed. The signal from the observatory reached the throne world. Inside the royal palace, the Empress watched. She heard her daughter's words, saw the golden guards retreat. Her hands tightened around the arms of her throne. "Prepare the war fleet," she said, her voice low. The general blinked. "Against your daughter?" The Empress's eyes were cold. "She has chosen her side. Now I will choose mine." Back on Varus 9, Kale lay on the floor, his head in Zelin's lap. She held him close, brushing the dirt from his face. "You stayed," he whispered. "You chose me," she said softly. "Now I choose you again." Outside, the first ships of the rebellion began to land. Traders, farmers, defected soldiers, even former enemies, each one answering Zelin's call. They came not for war, but for change. And above them all, floating like a message written in stars, the signal beacon kept glowing, the speech that changed everything. The skies over Varus 9 were no longer empty. From horizon to horizon, ships filled the air, some sleek and polished, others scarred and broken. They came from all corners of the galaxy. Merchant fleets, rebel, cruisers, stolen imperial crafts. They flew side by side, not as enemies, but as believers. They believed in her. Zelin stood at the top of the ruined observatory tower. Her cloak blew in the wind. Below her, thousands had gathered, faces from every world, beings once called weak, useless, forgotten. Now they stood tall, and high above them the Empire approached. The Empress's flagship, the Obsidian Thorn, cut through the clouds like a dagger. Behind it, the Royal War Fleet arrived, engines blazing, weapons armed. It wasn't a warning, it was a message. Submit, or be crushed. In the old control chamber, Kale limped toward Zelin. His body still ached from the last battle, but his eyes were steady. "She's coming," he said. "Not with words. With fire." Zelin nodded. "Then let her come." Rasa, armor cracked and blade in hand, stood beside them. "You're not thinking of fighting that entire fleet, are you?" "No," Zelin said softly. "I'm going to speak one last time." Kale blinked. "You think she'll listen?" Zelin looked at him. "I don't speak to change her mind. I speak to change the galaxies." The Empress's voice echoed. "From the sky, step down, daughter. Kneel and I will spare your life." Zelin walked forward, standing in the open with no armor, no army, no throne, just truth. "You never saw me," she said, her voice rising through the comms. "Only my sighs, only my silence, only your shame." The crowds watched. The ships hovered. Zelin kept going. "But today, I am not your daughter, not your failure. I am the voice of those you left behind." Her voice reached every channel, every corner of the system. "You rule by fear," she said. "But fear doesn't last, not when people remember their worth." Inside the royal flagship, the Empress stood frozen. She had planned for battle, for destruction. Not for this. Behind her, generals exchanged nervous glances. Soldiers whispered. Zelin's words cut deeper than any blade. On the ground, the people began to chant, slowly at first, then louder. "Zelin, Zelin, Zelin." Across the galaxy, others joined. Colonies under Empire control. Prisoners in silent cells. Even former nobles who once called her weak. "Zelin, Zelin." The Empress raised her hand to silence the noise. "Fire," she commanded. But the weapons did not respond. Her own fleet had locked control. The general turned toward her. "They're not following orders." "What?" "They're standing down." On Varos 9, Zelin saw the Imperial ships turn, not to flee, but to land. The Royal Guard stepped out first, kneeling before her, not because they were forced, but because they believed. The Empress watched it unfold, the galaxy slipping through her fingers. A message came through her console. From Zelin. Just 4 words. "You made me strong." For the first time in her life, the Empress lowered her head. Days later, the Empire fell without war. A new alliance was born, not ruled by fear but led by voices once silenced, and at its center was Zelin. Not a queen on a throne, not a warrior with a crown, but a girl who was once told she was too small. She walked through the rebuilt observatory with Kale by her side. Rasa followed, now commander of the galaxy's first peace fleet. "Do you ever wonder?" Kale asked. "What would have happened if I never stepped into that hall?" Zelin smiled. "I would have found my voice anyway. You just helped me hear it sooner." He looked at her. "And now? Now I help others do the same." And somewhere in the stars above, millions of voices remembered her name. Not because she ruled them, but because she reminded them that even the smallest voice can shake the sky.